Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today we're talking about 2021. Let's begin with what I mostly skipped over in our discussion of 2020, Good Game Studios' updates to the Strom Islands. First, Good Game Studios made it once again worthwhile to participate in the event. In addition to updating Luna's trade boat to add relic equipment and more powerful decorations, the developers also buffed the Alliance and individual prizes given out at month's end. As a result, the Strom Islands was now a decent source of construction and upgrade tokens, as well as, starting a bit later, skeets. Next, Good Game Studios made it so that players would accrue a small amount of cargo points whenever they looted Aquamarine from a resource island or a storm fort. Thus, for active looters, it would no longer even be necessary to construct cargo ships. I had mixed feelings about this. The change no doubt made the event simpler and easier, but it eliminated the need to engage with what had previously been a significant part of the Strom Islands. I had thought that forcing players to choose between spending Aquamarine at Luna's trade boat or investing it in cargo ships presented an interesting strategic dilemma. Nevertheless, as I noted in my Strom Islands tutorial video, I think the change was on balance a good one, because it allowed all players, including unpaying players, to collect more decorations. Simply put, the more things free-to-play players could do in the Strom Islands, the better. As you can see, I myself managed to collect quite a few Tide Gardens. A third change to the Strom Islands, not necessarily specific to this update, but rather a result of the relic equipment that had been added in 2019, was that certain relic heroes enabled players to send quick attacks using wooden mantlets. Other changes to the equipment system, plus the global server effects, tightened the race to collect Aquamarine. More commanders at the player's disposal also meant more Aquamarine. Accordingly, as part of this update, Good Game Studios increased the storage limit for Aquamarine to 600,000. One reason I've always liked the Strom Islands is that it's a fairly accessible event. All players at or above level 35 can participate. And, because the Strom Islands is its own kingdom, players start on a relatively clean and balanced slate. Build items are not allowed in the Strom Islands, and neither are mead production buildings. The Strom Islands, then, evokes a version of Empire that otherwise exists only in the past. Additionally, the Strom Islands is, relatively speaking, free of monetization. Originally, Good Game Studios expected players to purchase skips to complete cargo ships. Today, however, skips are readily available from a wide variety of in-game sources, and, as we've discussed, this update essentially made building cargo ships optional anyways. As a result, players need only to spend rubies to upgrade their harbor to have a decent shot at performing well in the event. In February, Good Game Studios added Empire's third district, the Inner District, which could accommodate buildings like taverns, hideouts, and guardhouses. Once again, the Inner District was first available as the top LTPE prize, displacing the Trade District, which moved to the Master Blacksmith. Other February updates included the ability to mark equipment pieces as favorites and temporary appearance build items with powerful effects. Good Game Studios also sent players a free gift package that included a longship figurehead, a temporary commander look that transformed the player's army into a horde of ice warriors, in addition to giving 10% extra combat strength and 3 additional waves. The purpose of the gift was to advertise that additional longship figureheads would be sold in premium offers. Looks like this enabled attackers to have more success at PvP, because they increased the amount of soldiers that could be sent on the attack. Many other themed looks would soon follow. For Valentine's Day, Good Game Studios introduced the Pedestal of Passionate Love, a premium decoration with 2,500 public order. In March, Good Game Studios unveiled a new theme for the LTPE, the Four-Leaf Festival, featuring the first Inner District. The appearance of robber baron castles was also updated. Most significantly, players noticed they could now demolish most premium buildings like the Willow of Experience and the Master Builder. In April, Good Game Studios once again revised the rewards associated with Empire's primary events. As a result, it also increased the level requirements to participate in the events. For example, the Nomad Invasion would now only be accessible to players of at least level 30. As an unfortunate result, New, low-level Empire players were left with less to do. Good Game Studios also added the Rewards Hub, a location where players could claim their Kingdoms League rewards and later open mystery boxes. Toward the end of April, Good Game Studios made some minor technical improvements. The equipment forging animation was quickened, allowing players to more rapidly clear their inventory of outdated equipment. Additionally, Commander and Castellan looks would now display their appearance within their in-game tooltips. Finally, players were given more granular control over the mead production slider in the brewery. April also saw a refresh of the Wheel of Unimaginable Affluence's reward pool, mostly to add more temporary appearance build items. June's update was tremendously unpopular. You'll recall that in a previous episode, we discussed how the Master Blacksmith had benefited unpaying players by allowing them to obtain a significant number of premium tools. Well, after almost 2 years, Good Game Studios had finally caught on. Much like they had with the Lucky Pennies years before, Good Game Studios explained that the Master Blacksmith had caused an unintended effect on Empire's economy. Accordingly, the prices of tools would simply need to be increased, and strict caps would need to be imposed on the numbers of premium tools sold by the Master Blacksmith. In an attempt to offer players a compromise, Good Game Studios introduced tiered pricing for most tools. This meant that players could obtain a small number of premium tools at the old, cheap prices, and a moderate number of tools at competitive prices. Players could also buy a theoretically unlimited number of tools, but at a prohibitive cost. As the Master Blacksmith had rightly been seen as one of the only modern updates to benefit free-to-play players, this change was poorly received within the community. In July, Good Game Studios added 2 new buildings, the Refinery and the Toolsmith. You guessed it, before players could construct these buildings, they would first need to unlock them for skeets at the Hall of Legends. The Refinery allowed players to convert wood and stone into refined wood and refined stone, respectively. Using the Refinery required crafting manuals, which were automatically available once the refinery was built, but could be upgraded via a level 5 research tower, which itself would need to be unlocked at the Hall of Legends. The resources produced at the refinery could be spent at the Toolsmith, which enabled players to produce components, in turn used to craft powerful sovereign combo tools at the siege and defense workshops. One such attack tool was the Fortified Ram, which, at level 1, reduced gate protection by 30% and ranged defender strength by 15%. Unfortunately for the attacker, the number of sovereign tools he could use was limited, in this case to 5. For an example of a sovereign defense tool, consider the Trebuchet, which, at level 1, increased moat protection by 80% and wall protection by 60%. Higher levels of sovereign tools could be unlocked in the Hall of Legends for yet more skeets. To craft these sovereign tools, the player would also need to upgrade his workshops to level 4, which, again, required significant construction time as well as skeets and time invested at the Hall of Legends. As a consequence of the new buildings and features, Good Game Studios increased the legendary level cap to 950. There were no new corresponding Hall of Legends upgrades, as the new content would need to be unlocked using skeets, not legendary points. All of this new content was neat, but for a long time it remained inaccessible to most players due to the significant unlock times and construction costs involved. In August, Good Game Studios had reason to celebrate. It was Empire's 10th anniversary. To mark the occasion, Good Game Studios published a series of interviews with some of its employees. I've linked to a playlist of these videos in the description. Some of them are interesting. Here's what the anniversary celebrations were like in-game. There was a 2,700 public order Triumph of Bravery decoration, as well as a balloon-themed collector's event that awarded the Timeless King. Additionally, Good Game Studios ran a special LTPE that awarded anniversary tablets in place of gold and silver pieces. Unfortunately, every LTPE since has similarly awarded a temporary currency redeemable at only a limited shop in the Master Blacksmith, rather than the traditional gold and silver pieces. This largely undid the Master Blacksmith's remaining advantage, which is that Good Game Studios needed only to update and balance 2 shops. Also in August, Good Game Studios again updated the prizes associated with the Wheel of Unimaginable Affluence. I liked the way this forum post put Good Game Studios' message to the players. how rich are you? Note that I asked Google Chrome to translate this forum post from the original German. Thus, how rich are you is likely the result of an imperfect, but certainly apropos translation. At the very end of August, Good Game Studios announced new support tools, including the hand cannon and the fire trap. These tools came with significant attributes that could affect the courtyard battle. A level 1 hand cannon, for example, increased combat strength of attackers by 20%, while also automatically killing 300 defenders. Whether on offense or defense, only one support tool could be used per battle. Also in August, a new checkbox in the brewery allowed players to prioritize mead production over food consumption. Now, running out of food would be more likely to lead to desertion of regular troops than to cause the brewery's productivity to fall. Sadly, Good Game Studios also effectively removed tool burning as a viable PvP strategy. Tool burning, you'll recall, was when an attacking player sent a tiny attack, usually with only 3 soldiers per wave, for the specific purpose of wasting the defending player's tools. A smart attacker could follow up his tool burning attacks with a real attack, timed to land just seconds after the tool burners, and do significant damage to his opponent's castle. Tool burning was used by all players, but it particularly benefited free-to-play players because it made premium tools less valuable. Defending players did have options to handle these attacks, including temporarily taking their tools down, but this was difficult when the attacks were well timed. Large ruby spenders complained, perhaps because they figured that spending money in Empire should guarantee their success. After all, why make PvP about skill? Good Game Studios' solution was simple. Defending players could now tick a box in the settings menu to prevent their tools from being used to defend against small attacks. The removal of tool burning was yet another change that made PvP less interesting and skill-dependent. You'll recall that in the previous 2 years, Good Game Studios had also introduced private resource villages and a filter to disable incoming attacks and market barrows. In September, Good Game Studios added premium defense tools like quicklime bombs and fire motes to the Master Blacksmith. In October, Good Game Studios changed the military hospital to prioritize mead units and gave players the option to sell certain relic buildings to recover construction and upgrade tokens. New and improved search filters at the Master Blacksmith were also added. November's biggest update was scaling event difficulty, which was introduced first for the Glory Invasions. Good Game Studios recognized that, in light of its latest updates contributing to a significant growth in player power, certain players needed a greater challenge. However, as not all players had access to the mead units yet, event difficulty couldn't simply be increased for all level 70 accounts. Rather, players would now be able to self-select their difficulty level from among whatever difficulty levels they had unlocked or purchased. Defeating a significant number of foreign invader castles on Intermediate Plus difficulty, for example, would earn the player an achievement and unlock hard difficulty. As you might expect, higher difficulty levels offered greater rewards. The highest difficulty level for all events is Archmaster and can only be unlocked temporarily for rubies. In some cases, however, the increase in the number of casualties taken on higher difficulty levels exceeds the increase in rewards. Additionally, while the number of troops players could feed had grown, speed of recruiting generally had not. Accordingly, it was not always worth attempting an event on a higher difficulty level. December marked a quiet end to the year, with Good Game Studios' only real announcements being a wave of bans for bot-using players, and the addition of third-party ads to the Outer Realms and Beyond the Horizon. And with that, we've made it to the end of 2021, and of this episode. Let me know what you thought of this year's updates in the comments. As a heads up, I will most likely have to delay the next upload until August. I've been working on these videos a few weeks in advance, but in July I'll both be moving to a new apartment and taking the bar exam. As you might imagine, those two happenings won't leave much time to work on videos. So, you'll probably hear from me next in August. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.